My name is Ariana Cole. I'm 31 years old, 8 months pregnant, and I've spent most of my life being the person everyone leans on without ever asking whether I'm already carrying too much. I work as an operations coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. I track shipments, renegotiate vendor contracts, and fix problems before they turn into disasters. I'm good at it because I notice details early, the missing numbers, the quiet panic hiding behind polite emails. At work, they call me reliable. At home, they just assume I'll handle it. I live in a modest townhouse with creaky stairs and a washing machine that shakes like it's angry every spin cycle. I've taped a handwritten note above it that says "Still works," part reassurance, part plea. I keep lists everywhere. On my phone, on sticky notes, on the back of unopened mail. Lists make things feel possible. Doctor appointment, prenatal vitamins, pay utilities, breathe. I was folding baby clothes the night before my baby shower, lining them up by size and color like order could somehow protect what was coming. Tiny socks, soft onesies. I pressed them flat with my palms, feeling my baby shift inside me. Slow, heavy movements that felt less like kicks and more like questions. My mother insisted on hosting the shower at her house. "You shouldn't be stressed right now," she said. "Let me do this." That sentence always sounds like care when she says it. What it really means is I'm in charge. My mom, Denise, is the kind of woman who fills rooms effortlessly. She survived divorce, financial chaos, and a life that didn't follow the plan she imagined, and she wears that survival like a badge. People admire her strength. I used to too. She loves to say, "Family is everything," especially when someone is expected to sacrifice for it. Then there's my younger sister, Nina. Nina is 26, radiant, the kind of beautiful that people describe as light. When she enters a room, conversations bend toward her. When she makes mistakes, they become charming stories. When I make mistakes, they become lessons. Growing up, I was the one who remembered appointments, filled out forms, kept track of deadlines. Nina was the one who followed her feelings. Mom used to say it balanced out. What it really did was set roles early. The baby shower was supposed to be simple. Cake, games, gifts, photos. A soft celebration before life became loud. When I arrived, Mom's house was already glowing. Pink and cream balloons floated near the ceiling. A banner stretched across the wall, "Welcome, baby." There was a gift table stacked, so high it made my chest ache in the good way. For a moment, I let myself believe this day was about me. Friends hugged me carefully. Someone pressed a hand to my belly and said, "Any day now." The cake smelled like vanilla and sugar. Nina arrived late, of course, sweeping in with her fiancé like they were attending a premiere. She kissed my cheek and said, "You look tired," the way people say hello. Mom had a microphone. She always does. Right before we cut the cake, she tapped it twice. The room quieted instantly. Her smile was wide, practiced, electric. "I just want to say how grateful I am," she began, "to have such a beautiful family. And before we continue, I have a little surprise." A ripple of excitement moved through the room. I felt a flutter in my chest. Not joy exactly, but anticipation trained by years of being adjacent to Mom's announcements. Nina gasped softly, one hand already lifting toward her chest. Mom reached beneath the table and pulled out a sleek, glossy envelope. Thick, expensive looking. She held it up like a prize. "This," she said, turning slightly so everyone could see, "is for Nina and her fiancé." Applause broke out immediately. I didn't understand yet. I smiled anyway. That reflex is muscle memory. Mom continued, her voice bright. "A fully paid European honeymoon. Rome, Paris, Santorini, everything included." Someone whistled. Someone else said, "Wow. $32,000. Mom added proudly, like she just announced a scholarship. The room exploded with cheers. Nina screamed and hugged Mom. Phones came out. People clapped harder. Someone said, "That's love." Nina looked stunned in the way people look when they expect miracles and still get surprised by them. I stood there holding a ribbon I'd been untying from a gift. My baby shifted sharply inside me, a sudden, jarring movement that stole my breath. I set the ribbon down because my fingers had started to shake. Mom turned to me then. Her tone changed. No sparkle. No softness. Ariana, she said briskly, like she was checking something off a list. Don't forget, my car payment is due Friday. It's $610. The room didn't go silent. It didn't need to. Something in me did. Nina smiled at me over Mom's shoulder. We'll send pictures, she said sweetly. I smiled back. That's what I do. And that was the moment, standing in a room full of balloons and applause, that I realized my baby shower had just become something else entirely. Something I wasn't invited to celebrate. I don't remember how long I stood there smiling after that. Time gets strange when something inside you cracks, but you're still expected to perform. My face stayed pleasant. My shoulders stayed relaxed. I nodded at the right moments, laughed softly when someone made a joke about rich honeymoons, and rubbed my belly like this was all completely normal. Inside, everything was rearranging itself. Mom handed the microphone off like she just wrapped up a flawless presentation. The cake was cut. Someone smeared frosting on Nina's nose for a photo. I was guided to a chair for the gift opening portion, my body lowered carefully like I was fragile glass. That part made people feel kind. Open mine next, someone called. I did. I thanked them. I stacked gift bags neatly at my feet. Bottles. Bibs. A soft gray blanket I pressed to my cheek for half a second too long because it smelled like clean cotton and safety. Every few minutes, someone leaned over to whisper, "Your mom is amazing," or, "That honeymoon, wow," like it was something we'd all won together. Mom hovered nearby, glowing. Nina sat close to her, one manicured hand resting possessively on the glossy folder like it might float away if she let go. Her fiancé kept kissing her cheek, shaking hands with guests, saying, "We're so blessed." No one questioned the timing. No one questioned why my baby shower had become their announcement stage. That part hurt more than the money. At some point, Mom leaned down beside me. "Did you thank Aunt Rochelle for the stroller?" she asked quietly. "She likes acknowledgement." I nodded. Of course she does. When the gifts were done, I excused myself to the kitchen. I needed a task. Something physical. I started washing serving trays that were already clean. The water was too hot. I welcomed the sting. My reflection in the window above the sink looked distant, like I was watching someone else move my body. Nina breezed in a moment later, heels clicking cheerfully. "Isn't today perfect?" she said. I dried my hands slowly. "It's a lot," I replied, which felt like the safest truth available. She laughed. "You're always so serious. Mom just wanted to do something special." "For you," I said, not unkindly. She tilted her head. "Well, yeah, you already have everything figured out." That sentence landed like a verdict. She touched my arm. "You don't mind, right? You're not offended." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't being cruel. She didn't have to be. She had grown up learning that things worked out for her. That was her reality. That was the gift. "I'm fine," I said, because that's the word that keeps the peace. She smiled, satisfied, and floated back into the party. When I returned to the living room, Mom was holding court again, explaining how she'd made it happen by planning ahead, sacrificing, prioritizing love. I noticed how easily the word sacrifice left her mouth. Someone asked how far along I was. 8 months. Any day now. Another hand on my belly. Another comment about glow. Then Mom's voice cut through again. "Oh, Ariana," she called out. "Before I forget, did you ever call the insurance company about my claim? They're impossible." I felt every eye flick toward me for just a second before sliding away again. The assumption was seamless. Of course I would handle it. Of course I had already agreed. "I'll look into it," I said. Mom nodded, pleased, and went back to laughing. By the time people started leaving, my cheeks hurt from smiling. I hugged everyone goodbye. I thanked them for coming. I accepted compliments I didn't feel. Nina posed for more photos, holding the honeymoon folder like a newborn. At the door, Mom kissed my cheek. "Such a lovely day," she said. "You didn't get overwhelmed, did you?" "No," I said. She squeezed my arm. "Good. Stress isn't good for the baby." At home that night, I unloaded gifts alone. The house was quiet in that echoing way that makes you feel smaller. I stacked boxes by the wall. Hung tiny clothes in the closet. I paused when I reached the blanket again, pressing it to my face this time, breathing until my chest stopped feeling tight. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my banking app. I didn't know why. Habit, maybe. Or instinct. There it was. The car payment pending. The utilities scheduled. The familiar numbers lined up like soldiers. $32,000. $610 due Friday. I thought about the applause. The laughter. The way Mom's voice had sparkled for Nina and flattened for me. I lay back and stared at the ceiling fan as it spun, slow and relentless. My baby rolled inside me. A deep, steady movement that felt like grounding. I placed my hands over my stomach and whispered, "I see you." I didn't cry that night. I just felt something begin to shift. Quietly, almost politely. Like a door unlocking somewhere I hadn't realized was closed. The next morning, I woke with a dull ache behind my eyes, the kind that comes from clenching your jaw in your sleep. Sunlight crept through the blinds in thin stripes, and for a moment, everything felt normal. Then memory slid back into place. The honeymoon. The applause. The car payment. I lay there, one hand on my stomach, the other resting on the nightstand where my phone buzzed softly with notifications I wasn't ready to read. This hadn't started at my baby shower. That was just the first time it had happened with an audience. Growing up, money in our house was never discussed openly. It existed as tension, as whispers behind closed doors, as Mom saying, "We'll figure it out," in a tone that meant don't ask questions. When I was 10, I wanted to join a soccer team. The fee was modest, but Mom hesitated. "You'll probably lose interest," she said. "Let's not waste money." I nodded, embarrassed for asking. When Nina wanted dance lessons a year later, Mom found the money within a week. "She has talent," she said. "It would be cruel not to support that." At 12, I started babysitting. At 13, I had my first part-time job filing papers at a neighbor's office. I learned early that if I wanted something, I'd need to earn it, or explain why I deserved it. Nina never had to explain. At 16, I worked weekends at a grocery store, saving for college textbooks. Nina tried a summer job at a cafe and quit after 2 weeks because the manager was negative energy. Mom comforted her. "Some people just aren't meant to work like that," she said. I didn't know then that work and love were being divided differently between us. After Dad left, things tightened. Bills piled up. Mom cried more often. I started answering the phone when unknown numbers called because I could tell when it was a collector. I learned what words calmed them down. Hardship. Temporary. Payment plan. By 18, I was handling conversations that made my stomach hurt. By 20, my debit card was linked to accounts that weren't mine. "It's just until things stabilize," Mom said. They never did. When Nina needed a new phone, I covered the activation fee. When her car broke down, I paid for the tow. When Mom's credit card maxed out, she asked if I could spot her for a bit. And I did. Every time. Not because I was generous. Because saying no felt like breaking something fragile. I told myself it was family. That this was what responsible people did. That once Nina was settled, once Mom caught up, once things evened out, I'd step back. But something always came up. The engagement amplified everything. Suddenly, there were vendors. Deposits. Timelines. Mom moved through it all like a general planning a campaign. Nina glowed. I drove. I paid. I nodded. Once I mentioned a budget. Mom frowned like I'd spoken another language. "We're not doing cheap," she said. "This is her moment." When I suggested my wedding gift would be a set amount, Mom looked at me like I'd confessed a crime. "That doesn't even cover photography," she said flatly. "What I can do is what I can do," I replied, my voice careful. Nina laughed. "You worry too much." The baby shower cracked something open because suddenly there were 2 futures in the room. One funded by celebration. One funded by obligation. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from Nina. "Did you see how everyone loved the cake? Mom outdid herself." I didn't respond. Mom texted later. "Don't forget the car payment Friday. Also, did you get the insurance thing handled?" I stared at the screen longer than necessary. For the first time, a thought finished itself in my head. Why is this mine? Not why am I helping? I had answered that 1,000 times. But why is this expected? That question was new. Dangerous. I spent the afternoon organizing baby supplies, moving slowly, deliberately. Every item had a place. Diapers in one drawer. Wipes in another. I needed the physical order because my thoughts were unraveling. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at every recurring charge. Some I recognized, some I didn't. There were subscriptions I'd never signed up for. Utilities from addresses I didn't live at. Temporary had become permanent. My baby rolled again, heavier now, like he was settling in. "I won't do this to you," I whispered. "Not the money part. The silence part." I realized then that I'd been taught something very specific, that my needs were optional, and my usefulness was not. The baby shower hadn't humiliated me. It had named the pattern. And once something has a name, it's harder to pretend it doesn't exist. I closed my laptop without changing anything. Not yet. But for the first time, I didn't tell myself just get through this month. I told myself something else instead. This can stop. Change doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives like a thought you're afraid to finish. I carried that thought with me for 2 days after the baby shower, letting it sit beside me while I folded laundry, while I answered work emails, while I waited in the doctor's office listening to another woman complain about swollen ankles. I nodded sympathetically, my hands resting on my belly, my mind somewhere else entirely. This can stop. The idea felt rebellious, ungrateful, dangerous. I had built my life around being necessary. Necessary people don't get to opt out without consequences. That's what I'd been taught. The first night, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was hormonal, that pregnancy magnified emotions, that this wasn't the time to rock anything. I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. My ceiling fan spun in steady circles, hypnotic and relentless, like it was counting down something I didn't want to acknowledge. At 1:17 a.m., I got up. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the microwave. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table, the glow of a screen lighting up the stack of baby books I hadn't opened yet. I didn't start with courage. I started with curiosity. I logged into my bank account. Every recurring charge stared back at me like an accusation. Dates, amounts, names I recognized and names I didn't. There was my mother's car payment, her internet bill, a streaming service I'd never watched. Each one had been added with a story. Each one had stayed because I never removed it. I clicked into the autopay settings. My finger hovered. I thought about the applause at the baby shower, about how easily $32,000 had appeared for romance while my own future came with reminders and deadlines. I thought about my son needing daycare, needing security, needing a mother who wasn't constantly stretched thin by obligations she never agreed to out loud. I canceled the autopay. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" I clicked yes. Nothing dramatic happened. No alarms. No guilt lightning bolt from the sky. Just a confirmation message and a quiet sense of pressure releasing in my chest. I removed my card from one account, then another, and another. My hands shook, but my breathing stayed steady. That surprised me. Fear usually came with panic. This felt different. Controlled. Intentional. Next, I opened my email. I addressed one message to my mother. I CC'd myself, not out of spite, but clarity. The subject line took me the longest. Finally, I typed, "Next steps, boundaries and plan." I wrote calmly, professionally, the way I wrote work emails when stakes were high and emotions had to stay out of it. "I love you. I'm becoming a mother, and my financial priorities are changing. Effective immediately, I will no longer be covering your car payment or household expenses. I can help you create a budget if you'd like. For the next 60 days, please contact me by email only. In emergencies involving health or safety, call me." I read it 3 times. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was clear. Then I wrote to Nina. "My gift remains what I shared previously. Please don't use my name or accounts for wedding or travel expenses. Any additional arrangements should go directly through your vendors." I sent that one faster. My heart was pounding now, but underneath it was something else, relief. Like setting down a weight I hadn't realized was bending my spine. I didn't stop there. I opened a new checking account at a different bank. Updated my direct deposit. Changed passwords. I wasn't running. I was separating. I opened a document and titled it Boundaries. I made 2 columns. What I will no longer do. Pay bills that aren't mine. Be the default emergency. Respond immediately to guilt. What I am willing to do. Offer advice if asked respectfully. Spend time together. Be present as a sister and daughter, not a wallet. I printed it. Paper feels final in a way screens don't. At 2:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Nina. Hey, can you send $700? Photographer deposit is due tomorrow. Mom's tapped. I'll pay you back Friday. Friday. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then my phone buzzed again. Mom, hope you didn't take the honeymoon the wrong way. We just wanted something magical for Nina. Also, don't forget the car payment. I turned my phone face down. For the first time in years, I didn't respond. I sat on the kitchen floor and sorted baby socks instead. Tiny pairs. Soft cotton. I matched them carefully, not because they needed to be perfect, but because the act felt grounding, like a promise. At some point, my son shifted inside me, slow and steady, not frantic like before. I placed my hands over my stomach and whispered, I'm choosing you. I went to bed before dawn. I didn't sleep much, but when morning came, I felt different. Not fearless, not free, just decided, and that, I would learn, was enough to change everything. The next morning, the sun slanted through the blinds and cast long stripes across the nursery. I hadn't slept well, but I felt lighter, more focused. My son shifted inside me as if he understood that something in our household was different. I could feel his tiny movements tracing the line I had drawn, reminding me why I had drawn it at all. I sipped coffee slowly, letting the bitter warmth settle in my chest. Normally, I would have logged into my bank account, checked the autopay, and confirmed that everything for Mom and Nina was processed. Not today. Today, I had already taken control, even before the caffeine fully kicked in. Then my phone buzzed. One notification. One message. And it was already testing me. Nina, hey, can you Venmo me $600? Photographer deposit due Friday. Mom's asking. I stared at it. My hands hovered over the screen. There it was, the test I had been preparing for. My first real challenge. Respond or comply. Reflex or choice. I typed nothing. Not yet. Instead, I opened the boundaries document I drafted the night before. My eyes scanned the 2 columns. What I will no longer do. Cover bills for others. Default emergency fixer. Respond immediately to guilt. What I am willing to do. Offer advice if respectfully requested. Attend family dinners. Provide support as a sister and mother, not as an accountant for other adults. I scrolled back to Nina's message. I took a deep breath. My son rolled inside me, slow, deliberate, like he was counting. I typed a response, carefully, calmly. I've already outlined my gift, and I'm not covering wedding or honeymoon expenses. Please contact your vendors directly for deposits. I can advise on budgets if needed. Thank you. Send. My finger hovered over the button, heart hammering in a way I hadn't felt since discovering autonomy was possible. And then I pressed. No immediate retaliation. No angry texts. Just silence. And it was beautiful. I spent the morning organizing the nursery, folding tiny outfits, placing swaddles in neat stacks. Each item I arranged was a declaration. This is mine to protect. My son's future. My energy. My patience. By midday, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Did you see my message? I hope you're not upset. The car payment Friday. Please respond. I let it ring. I sat on the couch and rested my hands over my belly, feeling the small, firm rolls of my son shifting. I whispered, not today. Today it is just us. Hours later, I got another message. Mom was panicking. Ariana, this is cruel. Family is family. You're letting hormones make you harsh. Call me. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. Not because I was punishing. Because I finally understood that compliance had never served me. It had only made me smaller. Instead, I opened my laptop and emailed Mom formally. Clear. Direct. Come. Mom, I love you. I'm becoming a mother in a month. Effective immediately. I will no longer be covering your car payment or household bills. If you need help with budgeting, I am available for 2 one-hour video sessions per month. For the next 90 days, all communication about financial matters should be via email only. Emergencies. Health or safety, call me. Love, Ariana. Send. The pressure lifted instantly. My chest felt strange, like someone had taken the weight off a ledge and let it fall harmlessly to the floor. I leaned back in the chair, listening to the dishwasher hum, not threateningly like before, but neutral. The apartment felt like mine again. My choices, my rules. A few hours later, Nina texted again. "Mom says you've changed." I typed back simply yes. The rest of the afternoon passed with a strange combination of fear and liberation. I did not check my phone compulsively. I did not second-guess the email I had sent. I washed the bottles I prepared for my son, and each gentle scrub felt like reclaiming space for us, not for the debts of the past. When evening came, I sat on the floor of the nursery, piles of folded clothes around me. My son rolled inside me, slower now, heavier. It was like he was reminding me I had fought for this space. For him. For myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. Not in a way that required perfection, but in a way that finally allowed breathing room. And I knew this was only the beginning. Boundaries would be tested again. Messages would come. Panic would come. But the quiet decision I had made at 1 a.m. had changed the rules of the game forever. It was no longer about keeping everyone happy. It was about keeping us safe. And that, I realized, was the kind of love I wanted to pass on to my son. 3 weeks later, the world changed in a way no autopay schedule ever could. My son arrived with a sharp, insistent cry that filled the room, announcing himself like a little commander staking his claim. His name was Elias, and the instant they placed him on my chest, he fit there like a sentence I hadn't realized I was waiting to speak. In those first quiet hours, I didn't check my phone. I didn't worry about bills, deposits, or anyone else's expectations. I only breathed, listened, and learned the contours of his tiny body. His weight, the smell of his hair, the way his hand curled over my finger, it all felt sacred. Everything else could wait. By the third day, the world outside the hospital tried to resume its usual rhythm. Messages from Mom and Nina had started piling up again. "Are you ignoring us? We need to talk. Call me Ariana." I stared at the phone for a long time. My body felt different now. My priorities had shifted, even more dramatically than before. For the first time, I realized something profound. I was not obligated to fix everything for everyone. Not anymore. My son needed me present, not stretched thin by years of quiet servitude. I responded once. Carefully. Professionally. Calmly. "I'm focusing on the baby. I will respond to messages about finances after 90 days if necessary. If this is an emergency regarding health or safety, please call. Love, Ariana." The relief that followed was almost shocking. It wasn't immediate applause or approval. There was no cheer, no clapping. Just the quiet knowledge that I had taken the reins of my life and refused to hand them over again. At home, the apartment felt like a sanctuary. The dishwasher rattled less angrily. I unfolded tiny onesies, washed bottles, and organized blankets, not out of obligation, but because it felt like prayer. Each task was a declaration. This is mine to protect. Mom continued to send messages. Panic, guilt, persuasion. I answered selectively, never emotionally, always in writing. Nina texted once more, pleading for additional funds. I typed back exactly what I had planned. The gift remains as previously stated. Any further arrangements should go through vendors directly. I am available to advise respectfully if asked. I didn't wait for gratitude. It wasn't mine to demand. Weeks passed. Each small action of maintaining my boundaries reinforced a new reality. My life could be structured around what I needed and wanted, not just what others expected of me. I no longer woke in the middle of the night imagining endless bills chasing me down hallways. I woke to the gentle weight of Elias rolling against me, the soft rise and fall of his chest, and a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. I started keeping a small journal for myself. Each day I wrote 3 things. 1 for Elias, 1 for myself, 1 for gratitude. Elias, today you rolled over for the first time. I today said no to taking over someone else's obligation. Gratitude, today for the first truly quiet afternoon I've had in years. Mom never threatened me physically or emotionally again, not after the first week. There were attempts at manipulation. Yes, texts, calls, veiled guilt, but they no longer held the power they once did. Every time I reinforced my boundaries, the old dynamics weakened. Nina visited once, smiling as if nothing had changed. We shared coffee. I watched her try to hint at purchases and trips, but I responded the same way I always had, polite, firm, consistent. There was tension, yes, but also respect. A new kind of respect, earned silently, not demanded. By 4 months after the baby's shower, I felt different in my own skin. Not lighter. Lighter doesn't capture it, but steadier. Rooted. Powerful in a quiet way. I had learned that love isn't just giving. Sometimes love is refusing. Sometimes it is holding space for yourself and for your child above all else. When I cradled Elias on my chest at night, listening to his soft breathing, I realized I had learned a lesson worth more than any gift, any money, any favor. I had learned that protection and presence are the most radical acts of care. Not compliance, not self-erasure. Care. Full, deliberate, intentional. One evening, my mother called again. For the first time, I listened without tension. She was worried, yes, but she was also realizing that I wasn't the same person she had relied on for a decade. I answered calmly, offered guidance where necessary, and hung up without guilt. The apartment smelled faintly of baby lotion and warm laundry. The world outside was still moving, still noisy, still filled with expectation. But inside, I was learning the rhythm of my own life. Every diaper I folded, every bottle I sterilized, every soft sigh Elias released felt like a stitch in a new fabric of existence, one I had chosen for us. The baby shower was no longer a wound. It was a turning point. I had been given clarity in the form of humiliation, expectation, and imbalance, and I had responded with quiet, deliberate action. That is how I learned the final, most important lesson. You can love fiercely, care deeply, and still say no. You can protect yourself while protecting others. You can honor your child, honor yourself, and still navigate family without losing your ground. Elias rolled once more against my chest, heavier, deliberate, like a tiny confirmation. I smiled, pressed my forehead to his, and whispered the truth I had learned over months of quiet rebellion. This is ours. This is safe. This is real. And for the first time in a very long time, the dishwasher rattled in the background, and it didn't matter. Not today. Not ever again. The house felt like home. I felt like myself. And I knew I had finally begun.